Hi everybody, welcome along. We have a special free author event today and we're joined by Wenda Shurety. I hope I said that correctly.
Yes, all good.
Excellent. Thanks for joining us. At Braille House we have a bookshop where we sell secondhand books that raise funds to make Braille books for our library. So the author events are part of that. We have quite a large Braille library. So thank you for joining us. And you were born in England. Can you tell us about when you first came to Australia and what your thoughts were when you first came here?
Well, I came in 1996, so that's about 24 years ago now. So that's quite a long time ago. And I remember when I stepped off the plane, I was met with this sort of wall of humidity. I was like walking into a hot sauna where it was so hot. But I'm still here, so I'm enjoying the weather. I think also I find Australians really friendly. And when I first came here, I had to catch the ferry to go over to work, and the ferryman was so friendly and he introduced me to all the people on the ferry. And in fact, one of the friends that I met then I'm still friendly with today. Yeah. So yeah,
that's lovely. And so your book is Evas Imagination. What inspired you to write it? Did it come to you, or did something specific inspire it?
Well, the beginning was inspired by my daughter, Belinda. She's 10 years old now, but she was 5 years old then. And she came into my study and she threw herself on the floor and said, "Mum, I'm so bored." And I remember my mum saying to me, "Well, go and use your imagination." So the beginning of the story does relate to that a little bit. But the rest of the story was inspired by my adventures I had with my sisters. So we used to go around the house and have all the garden and have these amazing adventures. So the stairs would be our mountain and under the bed would be a spooky cave. So that's my inspiration.
A lot of parents can relate to the "I'm so bored."
Yes, lots of mums and dads, yep.
And you worked with Karen Erasmus.
Yes.
She did the illustration. How did that collaboration come about?
So the publisher, New Frontier, paired us together. Publishers often do that. They prefer to find the illustrator for a story rather than we bring an illustrator into the mix. So, and I was very excited to have Karen. She's a very talented artist and she really complements the story. And what's another thing which is really nice is, I didn't know this at the time, but she actually has a daughter called Eva. So it makes the story sort of extra special. Yes.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And so you've had great success with Evas Imagination. It was even read on the ABC's iconic show Play School by another favourite, Kate Ritchie. That must have been exciting. How did that come about?
Oh, that was very exciting. So basically I woke up one day and checked my emails, and I had an email from New Frontier, my publishers, and it said that Evas Imagination was going to be on Play School, and I could not believe it. I was so excited, and my daughter was very excited too, and both Karen and I were going on social media telling everyone about it, and yeah, it was very exciting. And I remember on the day, in fact, me and my daughter were watching it together. I couldn't believe there was Kate Ritchie, who's Sally, isn't she, from Home and Away? Yeah. And I remember her from when I was a teenager watching Home and Away, because it's very popular in England. And there was little Sally reading Evas Imagination. Amazing. So very lucky.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And just if anybody hasn't seen that, they should pop across to Wenda's web page and have a look at that. It's
yes. Please do, yes.
Yeah. So the book's about child's imagination. Do you think children are using their imagination less in these times when everybody has devices? Why is it so important for kids to use their imagination?
Yes, I think, unfortunately, I think children are using their imagination less. And that's just because with screens, whether it's a movie or playing a computer game, you're sort of fed the surroundings, the interaction of the characters, the scenery, it's all fed. You're not using your imagination at all. Whereas when you read a book, or if you're having unstructured play, you're using your imagination to create the characters. What do they look like? How do they interact? What's the scenery look like? So yes, reading is very important for imagination. So also when I was a teenager, I had no TV, so I was very lucky. I had quite a good imagination because of that. I had to make my own games up, and I read a lot of books. So yeah.
Speaking of reading, are you able to read us a little bit of Evas Imagination?
I can, yes, I'd love to. So let's have a see. So here's Evas Imagination, and this beautiful cover was illustrated by Erasmus, as well as the rest of the book. Okay. You may recognise the beginning a little. Just trying to get it fitting in the screen. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So Eva flung herself onto the soft carpet of the study. Mum, I'm bored. Recognise that? What's happened to your imagination, Eva? Asked Mum. Eva sat up. What's an imagination? Oh, you'll know when you find it, Mum smiled. Come on, Chops, let's hunt for my imagination, said Eva. She made a list of everything they would need. Snacks, good shoes, and a stick. I love this illustration. Make sure I get that one in. It's so beautiful. Eva sat off with Chops trotting behind. The sun shone brightly as they made their way through the narrow valley. And this is just a beautiful illustration, isn't it? Seeing the banisters casting the shadow of the trees, and the cat here with the panther.
Yeah, I love it.
So Eva has many adventures around the house.
Yeah, nice.
I won't give it all away.
Excellent. And so as a first-time author, or you've written some stuff, but is there any advice that you would give to a first-time author?
I think don't give up. Keep at it. It will happen. Make sure you get your work critiqued by other authors. Join a writers group or a critique group. I suppose if I can give a little secret tip of mine, I find that my stories that are being successful, they're being written from my own experiences. So I think evokes, that emotional connection when you read the story. So I recommend doing that.
That's great advice. And you've got 2 books coming out soon. Can you tell us a little bit about how they came about?
Well, actually, they were going to come out in 2020, so unfortunately they've been delayed, and so they're now coming out in 2021. But so actually I have 4 books coming out in 2021, so I'm going to be very busy.
It's a scoop.
I'm looking forward to that. So I'm having Dig, 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 and that's a story about a little boy who digs a hole from England to Australia.
Excellent.
Now that was actually influenced by my own childhood, because my sisters and I, along with our neighbourhood friends, we all got together and we decided to dig a hole to Australia. So that's where that story come from. And I've also got Nature's Toy Box. So these 2 stories are being published by Story House Publishing. And Nature's Toy Box is a story encouraging children to play outside and to connect with nature and get their hands mucky. I also have The Last Seaweed Pie, also to be published by Story House Publishing. And The Last Seaweed Pie is an environmental story involving ocean conservation and environmental migration. So one of my passions. And another story called Pair of Hope, which is going to be published by EK Books. And that's a story about a little girl who lives with a really serious condition and how she uses hope and it plays an important role in her recovery. Excellent.
Such important stories, all of them for children. So,
oh, thank you.
Yeah, no,
I can't wait for them to come out.
Yeah. And generally, people come up with ideas in strange places.
Mhm.
What's the strangest place that you've come up with an idea?
I think probably in the shower, which is really annoying because in the shower you don't have a pad and pen, do you? So you're desperately trying to remember the story before, you know, when you get dried and dressed again. So that's probably the funniest. Dig, 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 I actually wrote on the plane from Australia to England, and I was thinking about my childhood friends, and yeah, the story came out then.
No.
So yes.
I'm just with the new books and Evas Imagination. How are they different? Is the writing process different?
I think not not really, because I drew from my childhood experiences. I think the only different one perhaps was The Last Seaweed Pie, because that was very passionate about the environment, so I dug deep to get that one out. Yeah, so that's probably the one that was the most different.
Yeah. And can you give any advice to people watching about writing a book, or more specifically getting one published? You said you've got some great tips there for new authors, but the publishing process, what do you have any advice there?
So I was very lucky that Evas Imagination was picked up through the slush pile. That means when you send it off to a publisher and just hope someone likes it. So I was very lucky there. With Storyhouse Publishing, I was approached to write stories. So my advice would be to, as I said before, just don't give up. You know, if you've got the right advice, you've got some help, and your story, you know, you read it and it evokes that emotional reaction, I say you're on a winner.
Yeah. And generally, why is reading so important for children?
Well, that's a big question.
It is a big question.
I think reading is, it is, isn't it? Yeah, reading is very important for children. Gosh, there's many studies, isn't there, about why reading is important. There's ones about teaching children about language and emotions, improving their writing and vocabulary. Reading's really important to have for life skills, to be able to read labels on a jar or signs. I imagine that must be really difficult for people, you know, with Braille. I don't know how they read a label on a jar. I suppose people don't think about that, do they? But it must be quite hard. Yeah.
Yeah, they just put a Braille label on.
Is there Braille labels on jars? Sometimes?
Yeah, we can stick Braille onto anything. It's quite popular with tea and coffee because they go in similar jars.
Yes.
And,
okay,
tomato sauce and
I
barbecue sauce. Yeah.
I learned something new there. That's good. Yeah. I think one of the most important things about reading is it's entertainment, and I think one of my joys is going into my daughter's bedroom and seeing her sat down surrounded by books and just reading one, totally engrossed, and she won't even have a conversation with me, and I just think that's brilliant, you know, rather than stuck to the TV all day, which she is at the moment actually, but
yeah, everybody's kind of stuck inside.
That's because mum's busy, so
yeah,
she's
no.
crept off.
And what about yourself? What sort of books do you like to read?
I love contemporary fiction. So I just read a book called The Overstory by Richard Powers, which is a lovely book about trees and deforestation and activism, but great characters. So I recommend that book. I also read a middle grade recently called Lenny's Book of Everything. And so that's suitable for 8 to 12-year-olds. But I love reading middle grade books. There's some great ones out there. And that one's by Karen Foxley. And both my daughter and I got quite emotional when we were reading it. It's a beautiful story.
It's beautiful to share that with her as well.
Yeah.
No,
and I do like a bit of fantasy too. Who doesn't?
Yeah, well.
Yeah, I love His Dark Materials, Lord of the Rings, and anything written by Juliet Marillier, who's an Australian author.
Yeah, nice one. So are you able to read us a little bit from one of your upcoming books, or?
Yes, I can do that. Yeah.
Fantastic.
So here's a picture of the cover, what it's going to look like, and here's the main character called Jake.
Yep.
So yes, a story of a little boy who tries to dig a hole from England to Australia.
Again, that's beautiful pictures as well. Is that
Isn't it? Yeah, sorry.
illustrator
The illustrator is Andrea Stigmeyer. It's a beautiful illustration, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, lovely.
So Jake lived in Grey Street. Glum, gloomy Grey Street. Anywhere would be more exciting than here, he thought. He sighed and spun the globe round on the windowsill. On the other side of the world, he noticed a large island. What would it be like to live there? Did people walk upside down? Will Jake find out the answers? I have to wait till January when it's published.
Fantastic. A nice little sneak peek there for us. And where can people purchase your books, Wenda?
Well, I recommend they go to their local bookstore or bookshop.
Right.
And if they don't have them, they're very happy to order them in. Also, you can buy it online through either the publisher, so New Frontier for Evas Imagination, and the other books, Storyhouse Publishing and EK Books. And you can get it from Amazon, Booktopia, and Book Depository.
Nice. Very good. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been great to hear.
You're welcome.
A bit of a background, and we got a bit of a scoop into what's coming up. It's very exciting.
Thank you. It is exciting, yes. Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Do you have any parting messages for anybody watching this?
I do. So I do like a good old quote. So Albert Einstein. So he said, logic will take you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere.
Excellent. It's a beautiful So, Wenda Shurety, thank you so much for
You're welcome, Andrew.
And for joining us, and we wish you all the best.
Thanks very much for having me.
A pleasure. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.